my wake-up call. When I realized my bones were suffering, I still remember the day I slipped on the kitchen floor like it happened yesterday. It wasn't anything dramatic, not the kind of fall that makes it to the emergency room. I was just reaching for a jar of honey on the top shelf, and my foot caught the corner of a rug. Down I went. It was a soft fall, or so I thought. But the pain in my wrist lingered. A dull, nagging ache that stayed for weeks. At first, I chalked it up to aging, maybe just a sprain or a tweak. I even laughed about it with my neighbor, calling it my clumsy badge of honor. But deep down, something didn't sit right. It took longer than it should have to heal. And it wasn't just the wrist. My knees had started aching more often. My back? It would throb every time I stood too long at the stove. Still, I ignored it. Denial is a strange comfort. It wasn't until my granddaughter, little Emma, ran into my arms one afternoon, and I actually winced, when I picked her up, that I truly paused. I'm her grandpa. I should be tossing her in the air, running after her in the park, piggyback rides and all. But here I was, avoiding lifting a 5-year-old because of back pain. That hit me hard. The real wake-up call came during a routine checkup. I was expecting the usual conversation. Watch the cholesterol, cut the sugar, stay active. But the doctor looked at my x-rays and gently said, "Your bone density's on the lower side. You might want to take this seriously." Bone density? I thought that was just something women worried about after menopause. I had never given it a second thought. I'd always been active, ate reasonably well, and didn't have any big fractures in my life. But apparently, my bones were quietly weakening behind the scenes. That day, I walked out of the clinic with more than a report. I walked out with a mission. It's funny how we spend most of our lives chasing visible changes: muscles, weight loss, smooth skin, a full head of hair. But bones? They're silent. They don't scream until they break. And by the time they do, it's often too late. That night, I sat in my armchair, tea in hand, and started thinking, how many others are like me? Strong on the outside, but crumbling within without even realizing it? That quiet fall, the sore back, the nagging knee pain, they weren't just old age. They were signals, gentle nudges, warnings. So I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let my bones decide the quality of my golden years. I've lived too much, seen too much, and loved too much to spend the next chapter of my life limited by fragility. I was going to learn everything I could about keeping my bones strong, naturally. I didn't want to jump straight into prescriptions or expensive treatments. I wanted to go back to the roots, to nature, to lifestyle, to what our ancestors did before calcium pills lined every pharmacy shelf. There had to be a better, gentler way. The next morning, I opened a notebook and wrote on the first page, "Strong. Bones, strong life." That became my mantra. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I had to begin somewhere. I started by listening, really listening to my body. What made it feel better? What worsened the pain? I paid attention to my posture, to how I sat, how I walked, and what I ate. I began researching natural foods, minerals, movements. I talked to elderly friends who never broke a bone in their lives and asked them what their secrets were. Some laughed and said, "Good luck." But others had golden tips passed down through generations. Little by little, a picture began to form. And what I learned in the weeks that followed surprised me. It wasn't just about calcium. It wasn't just about exercise. It was about a whole way of living, balanced, mindful, and deeply rooted in nature's rhythm. But that's for the next part of my story. If there's one thing I want to leave you with from this first chapter, it's this. Don't wait for a fall to realize your bones are crying out. If your body is whispering, pay attention before it starts to shout. Your bones are your foundation, your internal scaffolding. And like any structure, they need care long before they show signs of Where? As I embarked on this journey to reclaim my bone strength, I discovered a lot. Some things that shocked me, others that comforted me. But every step I took brought me closer to a life where I wasn't afraid of falling anymore. Where I could run after Emma, lift her high, and feel the strength in my arms again. That's what this story is about. Not fear, but freedom. The kind of freedom that only comes when your body supports your spirit fully. And trust me, that kind of strength is possible. At any age. The silent thief. What weak bones feel like. They call it a silent disease for a reason. When your bones begin to weaken, there's no loud alarm, no flashing lights, just a series of quiet little changes that sneak into your life when you're not paying attention. And for the longest time, I didn't even realize what was happening to me. After that conversation with the doctor, the one where he mentioned my bone density was lower than normal, I started looking back, connecting dots I'd ignored for years. That sore wrist from the fall wasn't the first clue. The signs had been there much earlier. I just hadn't noticed, or maybe I didn't want to. It began with a stiffness in the morning, not the kind you stretch out after a minute or two. This stiffness felt deeper, almost like my joints were rusted from the inside. I'd roll out of bed and hobble to the bathroom like someone 20 years older. I told myself, that's just aging, and we all say that, don't we? But now I know aging is natural. Weakening unnaturally fast isn't. Then came the fatigue, not the sleepy kind. This was bone deep. I'd go for a walk, something I used to enjoy, and feel drained after 15 minutes. I'd come home, legs heavy, back aching, needing to sit down. And when I did, my spine felt sore, like it had carried more than it should. I remember once standing in the kitchen for an hour preparing lunch. Just an hour. By the time I was done, my heels were sore, my lower back was throbbing, and I had to lean on the counter just to rest. I used to stand and cook for entire family gatherings without a single complaint. What changed? I began to notice little things. How I avoided certain chairs because they didn't have good back support. How I took the elevator more often than the stairs. How I would hesitate before reaching for anything heavy like a grocery bag or a cast iron skillet. It wasn't fear. It was caution. My body had begun whispering, "Be careful." And over time, I started listening. But that's the scary part. How easy it is to get used to feeling fragile. You start accepting pain as normal. You shrink your world little by little. Less walking, fewer outings, no gardening, no grandkid piggyback rides. It's like your confidence shrinks with your strength. One of the hardest moments for me was when I caught my reflection in a shop window. I wasn't standing straight. My shoulders were slightly hunched, my neck leaning forward, almost like I was curling into myself. I'd never noticed it in the mirror, but there it was. Plain as day, a posture that whispered weakness. I came home that evening and sat quietly in my chair. I didn't turn on the TV. I just stared at the walls, thinking about how this silent thief had crept into my life, slowly, gently, almost politely. It didn't break my bones outright. It stole my strength, my balance, my sense of ease. You see, weak bones aren't always about fractures. Before the break comes the imbalance. Before the break comes the hesitation. Before the break comes the fear. And that fear begins to rule your choices. You become more careful, yes, but sometimes too careful. You begin to doubt your own body. And that's a terrible thing to lose, trust in yourself. One time, my daughter asked if I wanted to join a family hike. Just a light one. Nothing serious. And I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to go. I love the mountains. I love the sound of birds, the wind rustling through trees. But I was afraid I'd hold them back, that I'd stumble, that I'd need to rest too often, that something might happen. So I said no. I made up a story about needing to catch up on errands. And that evening, when they came back sun-kissed and smiling, I smiled too, but something inside me ached far worse than my back. I felt left behind. That's what weak bones can do to you, not just physically, but emotionally. They take away the small joys quietly. The spontaneous dance in the kitchen, the afternoon in the garden, the playtime on the floor with grandkids, it all starts to disappear. And still there's no warning bell, no sudden alert, just a slow erosion of vitality. That's why I call it the silent thief. It doesn't just take calcium, it takes freedom, confidence, presence. I started reading stories from others who'd experienced the same thing, women and men who fractured hips from simple stumbles, who lost height over the years, who lived with constant back pain because of vertebral compression. And I realized I was on the same path, just a few steps behind. But here's the part that matters. I wasn't going to let it go any further. The pain, the fatigue, the stiffness, they were not my destiny. They were signals, and signals can be listened to, responded to, even reversed. I truly believe that. The good news? Weak bones don't have to stay weak. Just like a neglected garden can bloom again with water and care, your bones, no matter your age, can regain strength bit by bit. But first, you have to recognize what's happening. You have to call the thief by its name. And once I did, I was ready to fight back, not with fear, not with drugs as my first resort, but with wisdom, natural remedies, mindful movement, and a bit of good old-fashioned determination. This part of my story isn't about defeat. It's about awakening, about finally hearing what my body had been trying to say for years. So if you've been feeling more tired, more stiff, less stable on your feet, if you've stopped doing things you once loved without even realizing why, it might not just be getting older. It might be your bones asking for help. I'm here to tell you, it's not too late. There's another path, a stronger one, and that's exactly where we're heading next. Nature knows best. The turning point in my journey. After I finally admitted to myself that my bones were weakening, I knew I had to make a change. But the real question was how. The doctor had handed me a pamphlet, circled a few supplements, and mentioned something about weight-bearing exercises. I nodded, thanked him, and left the clinic with that same polite confusion I've seen on many faces my age. We're told what to do, but rarely why, and almost never how in a way that fits into real life. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, holding the bottle of calcium pills I'd bought on the way home. I stared at them like they were foreign objects. I've never been one to reach straight for medicine. I don't like the idea of treating symptoms while the root cause still sits untouched. My grandmother used to say, "Don't fight nature, work with her." And in that moment, those words came rushing back. So I made a decision. I would go back to the roots. I wanted to understand what nature offered us to keep our bones strong. After all, our ancestors didn't have pharmacy shelves lined with pills, and many of them lived well into their older years with sturdy, dependable bodies. There had to be something they knew, something we've forgotten. That was the turning point. I started reading books, journals, stories. I watched interviews with natural health practitioners, read blogs written by people just like me, and reached out to old friends who had chosen holistic paths. I even called my cousin Lata in India, who'd spent years studying Ayurveda. What she told me blew my mind. She said, "Strong bones don't start in the bones. They start in the gut, the sunlight, the breath. You have to treat the whole body, not just the symptom." I remember sitting there, blinking at the phone. No one had ever put it that way before, and it made perfect sense. You see, we often think of bone strength as a single line item, calcium in, bones strong. But it's so much more layered than that. It's about how well your body absorbs nutrients, how your hormones support repair, how your muscles protect your frame, and even how your mind influences your posture and movement. That one phone call set me on a new path. And for the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Not just about treating my condition, but about understanding it. I started small. My first step? Sunlight. I committed to spending at least 20 minutes a day in the sun, preferably in the morning. Not just sitting, moving in the sun, a gentle walk, some stretches in the garden. Vitamin D, I learned, isn't just a supplement. It's a gift from the sky. And without it, calcium can't do its job. Within a week, I could feel the shift, not in my bones yet, but in my spirit. I felt more alive, more connected. Next came the food. I looked at my plate not with fear, but with curiosity. What could I add that would nourish my bones from the inside out? Leafy greens became my best friends. Kale, spinach, moringa. I added sesame seeds to my breakfast, almonds for snacks, and soaked figs at night, a tip from my cousin. I learned about magnesium, vitamin K2, boron, minerals no one had ever talked to me about before. Turns out they all play a role in bone health, but I wasn't just eating differently, I was eating intentionally. Every bite became a quiet affirmation. I am rebuilding. I stopped counting calories and started counting benefits. Then I discovered movement. Not exercise in the traditional sense, but bone-loving movement. Gentle strength training, weight-bearing yoga poses, even mindful walking. I started with 5 minutes a day. That was it. I didn't pressure myself. I listened to my body. When it felt strong, I did a little more. When it felt tired, I rested. And guess what? Over time, my body responded. My balance improved. I stopped reaching for the walls when I climbed stairs. My posture began to straighten. I caught my reflection in that same shop window weeks later, and this time I was standing tall. One day I was out for a walk when a woman from the neighborhood stopped me. She said, "You look different these days, lighter somehow. What are you doing?" I smiled and said, "I'm listening to nature," because that's really what it was. I had tuned in. I had stopped outsourcing my health to quick fixes and started taking responsibility, gently, kindly, naturally. One of the most powerful changes, though, wasn't physical at all. It was mental. The more I aligned with natural rhythms, the more I trusted my body again. And trust is everything. When you believe your body can heal, it starts to act like it can. I even began practicing deep breathing, especially during those stiff mornings. Just 10 slow breaths while lying in bed. It calmed my nervous system, oxygenated my blood, and centered my focus. It sounds simple, but it was deeply grounding. Like I was telling my body, "I'm here with you. We're in this together." Looking back now, that decision to return to nature was more than a health choice. It was a life choice. It reminded me of who I really am, of the wisdom we all carry in our cells, of the healing power that lives not in expensive bottles, but in the soil, the sun, and the stillness. I still keep those calcium pills on a shelf, not as a crutch, but as a reminder of the day I decided to choose a different path, a gentler one, a wiser one. And here's the truth. I'm not against modern medicine. Not at all. But I believe in starting with what's natural, what's time-tested, what's whole. Because sometimes the answers we need aren't hidden, they're just quiet. You just have to slow down and listen. My daily bone ritual, the simple habits that changed everything, it didn't happen overnight. I didn't wake up one morning suddenly stronger, more flexible, and pain-free. No magic cure arrived in the mail. What changed my bones, and honestly, my life, was a simple decision I made one morning while pouring tea. That morning, I told myself, start small, stay steady, show up, and that's exactly what I did. I created what I now lovingly call my bone ritual, a set of daily habits, that ground me, strengthen me, and reconnect me to myself. It's not complicated. It doesn't require a gym, a trainer, or a kitchen full of supplements. But it works. It absolutely works. Let me walk you through a typical day in my life now, the rhythm I follow to care for my bones naturally. Every single day. Morning. Awakening the body gently. I don't jump out of bed anymore. Those days are behind me. Now, the first thing I do is breathe. Lying on my back, before I even open my eyes fully, I take 10 slow, deep breaths. I fill my lungs gently and exhale slowly, relaxing my shoulders and hips. This simple ritual tells my nervous system, "You're safe. Today is yours." Then I do 5 minutes of bed stretches, ankle circles, slow knee hugs, gentle spinal twists. It's like sending a kind, good morning message to every joint. By the time I get up, I'm not stiff or groaning. I'm awake. Sunlight and movement once I'm dressed. I head outside. If the sun is out, I let it touch my face. I walk around the yard barefoot when I can, connecting with the ground. Even just 10-15 minutes of early morning light does wonders, not just for vitamin D, but for my mood. During this walk, I practice what I call bone walks. That means walking with awareness, shoulders back, core gently engaged, feet landing softly, spine tall. It builds posture, strengthens small muscles, and improves balance, all vital for preventing falls and supporting bone density. If I have time, I'll do a few weight-bearing moves, squats holding onto a chair, gentle lunges, or simple stair-stepping. Just 10 minutes is enough to signal my bones, you matter, stay strong. Breakfast, a bone boosting. Start breakfast has become a ritual in itself. I start with a glass of warm water and a squeeze of lemon, great for digestion and mineral absorption. Then I'll often make a bone-friendly smoothie. Here's my go-to recipe: a handful of spinach or kale almond milk, fortified with calcium, chia seeds or ground flax seeds, a banana for sweetness, a teaspoon of sesame seeds. Sometimes a scoop of plant-based protein. It's simple, delicious, and packed with nutrients that directly support bone repair and strength. If I'm in the mood for something warm, I'll make steel-cut oats with cinnamon, almond butter, chopped dates, and crushed walnuts. Another powerhouse for bones. Midday, breath, posture, and presence around. Midday, I pause, especially if I've been sitting for a while. I take a 5-minute break to stand up, stretch, and breathe. I roll my shoulders, do a few wall push-ups, and check my posture. Posture matters. It's not just about how we look. Poor posture puts uneven pressure on our spine and hips, leading to weakening over time. So I remind myself throughout the day, ears over shoulders, chest open, chin tucked. I also do a short breathing practice in the afternoon. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. This calms my system and helps my body absorb and use minerals more effectively. Yes, stress affects your bones too. Lunch and supplements. At lunch, I focus on whole foods, soups made with lentils and veggies, stir-fried greens with sesame, or a big salad with quinoa and seeds. If I'm taking any supplements, this is when I do it. Vitamin D3 and magnesium usually, but I always check with a professional before adding anything new. The food is the foundation. Supplements are just the backup team. Bone broth and evening support. In the evening, I often sip warm bone broth. It's rich in collagen, which helps keep joints and bones healthy. If I don't have bone broth, I'll make a mineral tea. Nettle, horsetail, and oat straw steeped for 10-15 minutes. It's calming and loaded with natural calcium and silica. Dinner is light but nourishing. Vegetable stews, sweet potatoes, sautéed greens with garlic and ghee. I've also added fermented foods like yogurt or kimchi, which support gut health, and as I've learned, gut health is essential for nutrient absorption. Wind-down ritual. My evenings are slower now. I avoid screens an hour before bed. Instead, I read, do gentle stretches, or simply sit in stillness. This helps my hormones, especially melatonin and cortisol, stay balanced, which in turn helps my bones regenerate during sleep. Before I slip under the covers, I do a quick gratitude practice. I whisper 3 things I'm thankful for that day, no matter how small. Gratitude, I've found, strengthens more than just the heart. It keeps your spirit whole. And a whole spirit supports a healing body. The power of repetition. Now you might be thinking, that's a lot to do every day. But it didn't all happen at once. I built this slowly, one habit at a time. And that's the secret. Consistency over intensity. I didn't try to fix myself in a week. I created a life that supports healing every day. These small habits have given me back things I thought I'd lost: balance, confidence, vitality. I no longer fear picking up my grandchild. I can squat down to reach a low shelf without worrying about pain. I stand taller. I feel stronger. Not like a superhero, but like me, the real me, before the fatigue and fragility crept in. And the best part? These habits don't just support my bones, they support my entire being. I sleep better, think clearer, and walk with joy again. This ritual isn't a punishment, it's a gift, a celebration, a way of honoring the body that carries me through this life. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Bones don't just need calcium, they need care. And every step I take, each day is a quiet message to my body. You matter, you're worth the effort. A stronger me. What life feels like. Now, if you had told me a few years ago that I'd be standing taller, walking steadier, and feeling younger in my 70s than I did in my 60s, I probably would have smiled politely and shrugged it off. Back then, bone strength felt like a lost cause, like something I'd never fully reclaim. I thought I was just supposed to accept the decline as part of aging. But today, I know better. I feel better. I am without a doubt a stronger version of myself, and not just physically. When I began this journey, I was chasing strength in the literal sense: firmer bones, better balance, fewer aches. But what I gained was far deeper. I found emotional steadiness, mental clarity, and a spiritual calm that I hadn't known I was missing. Strength, I've learned, is about so much more than muscles and minerals. I'll never forget the first time I realized just how much had changed. I was in the kitchen, reaching up to grab a pot from the top shelf, something I used to dread. I didn't hesitate. No wobble, no strain, no oof sound from my back. I just reached, and it felt normal. That tiny moment hit me like a wave. I trust my body again. And that trust? That's everything. I trust my legs to carry me through my morning walks. I trust my balance on uneven ground. I trust that when I bend to garden or play with my grandchildren, I'll rise with strength and not stiffness. That trust brings a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. And let me tell you something else. The confidence shows. People have noticed. Friends comment on my posture. My daughter said, "Mom, you look more alive these days." Even strangers, clerks, at the grocery store or neighbors on their porches smile when they see me. And it's not just how I look. It's how I carry myself. This isn't to say everything's perfect. I still have days where I feel a little tired or my knees ache after a long outing. But those days are fewer now. And when they come, I know what to do. I return to my rituals. I rest, I nourish, I breathe. I no longer panic or feel helpless. I feel equipped. That's a kind of strength no one can give you. You have to earn it. And I did. One of the most surprising rewards of this transformation has been how it's inspired others. My sister, who used to tease me for drinking green smoothies, now makes her own. My neighbor started joining me for walks in the park. And my grandson, bless his heart, even tries yoga with me on Sunday mornings, though he mostly giggles through it. But that joy? That connection? That's part of healing, too. Another gift I didn't expect was how much more in tune I became with everything. The weather, my breath, the seasons, even the foods my body wants. I no longer eat by habit or boredom. I eat with awareness. I move with purpose. I sleep with intention. Life, in every little detail, feels more sacred now. And that's the heart of it all, isn't it? Bone health isn't just about avoiding fractures or preventing osteoporosis. It's about creating a life where you feel grounded, literally and emotionally. Where your body supports your dreams, not limits them. Where you wake up excited to move, to stretch, to live. I used to feel like I was shrinking, not just in height, but in spirit. Like life was narrowing around me. But now it feels like life is opening again. I climb stairs without fear. I walk without looking down at every crack in the sidewalk. I carry groceries confidently. I sit cross-legged on the floor when my grandchildren want to play. And I rise again, proud and strong. There was a time I thought all of this was out of reach. But the truth is, the answers were always within reach. Nature had them. My body had them. I just had to slow down, listen, and trust the process. I also want to say this. Aging doesn't have to mean decline. It can mean refinement. It can mean deepening wisdom, increased awareness, and a renewed relationship with your body. We don't lose our power with age. We shift it. We concentrate it. And when we align with that truth, healing becomes possible. I've started journaling again, something I hadn't done in decades. I write about the way my body feels after a long walk, how the breeze lifts my spirits, how my morning tea tastes different now that I slow down enough to really enjoy it. These small joys are not small at all. They are vital. And here's what I know now, beyond any doubt. Bones are not rigid. They're living tissues. They respond. They regenerate. They adapt. Just like we do. You are never too old to get stronger. You are never too far gone to rebuild. And you are absolutely never alone in this journey. If my story can offer anything, I hope it's this. A reminder that you hold more power than you think. Not the kind of power that shouts and pushes, but the quiet, consistent kind. The kind that shows up every day, stretches in the sun, sips broth in the evening, and whispers, "I've got you." So here I am, stronger, wiser, steadier, and deeply grateful. Grateful to my body for forgiving the years I neglected it. Grateful to nature for providing every tool I needed. Grateful to myself for choosing the path of healing, not out of fear, but out of love.